Surprisingly, over 90% of viewers haven't subscribed yet. If you're enjoying the content, hit that subscribe button. It motivates us to keep creating and helps us never miss an upload, and I still remember the day my life fell apart. For 10 years, I believed I was a father. For 10 years, I poured my heart, soul, and every ounce of energy into raising my boy. From his first steps to his first bike ride, from helping him with school projects to staying up all night when he was sick, that was my world. I thought I was building memories, a legacy, a bond no one could break. But one conversation changed everything. It started like any other Saturday. I was out in the yard fixing the fence when my best friend Mark came over. He'd been my friend since childhood. We grew up on the same street, played on the same baseball team, even went to the same college. He was practically family, always around, always joking, always offering to help. But looking back, there were signs, little things I dismissed. The way he always stuck around my wife, a bit too long. The private jokes they shared that I wasn't in on. The way he always gave my son extra attention. That day, he said something offhand while drinking a beer with me. He looked at my son playing with a basketball and smirked. "That kid sure got my jump shot, didn't he?" I laughed at first, thinking he was just being his usual cocky self, but something in his tone made my stomach twist. Later that night, I asked my wife about it. She was in the kitchen, cutting vegetables like nothing was wrong. I said, "Hey, why would Mark joke about our son having his jump shot? What's that supposed to mean?" She didn't flinch. She didn't even look at me. She just laughed. A cold, sharp laugh that cut right through me. Then she said the words that still haunt me, "Because he's not yours. He never was." My world shattered. 10 years of memories collapsed into ashes. I stood there, frozen, waiting for her to say she was joking. But she didn't. She went on casually. "You're a good provider, but you're not exciting. Mark is. He gave me what I needed, and honestly, you should have noticed. He looks nothing like you." I couldn't breathe. It felt like someone had squeezed the air out of my lungs. I stumbled back, clutching the counter, trying to make sense of what she was saying. My wife of more than a decade, my best friend of a lifetime, both of them had betrayed me in the worst possible way. When I turned to my mother for support, hoping at least she would be outraged on my behalf, she shocked me even more. She said, "You should have seen it. I always wondered why you never noticed. The boy looks like Mark, not you. Honestly, you're blind." Instead of comfort, she gave me blame. That night, I sat alone in my car, parked a few blocks away, staring into nothingness. The pain was too heavy. My hands trembled as I tried to piece together every moment from the last 10 years, the birthday parties, the bedtime stories, the first day of school. None of it belonged to me. I felt like a stranger in my own life. I didn't explode. I didn't scream. I just shut down. For days, I barely spoke. I moved around like a ghost, watching the family I thought I had continue, as if nothing happened. My wife didn't even apologize. She thought I'd just accept it. She said, "He still needs a father figure. You're already here. Why complicate things?" Her audacity cut deeper than her confession. It wasn't just the betrayal. It was her expectation that I'd swallow my pride and continue playing a role in her lie. But inside me, something changed. A seed of cold resolve took root. I knew I wouldn't confront Mark directly. I knew shouting wouldn't solve anything. Instead, I decided I would withdraw. Quietly, carefully. I would stop giving them the best of me. I would start planning my exit. I slept in the guest room. I stopped joining them at the dinner table. My son, or rather Mark's son, asked me what was wrong. I couldn't even look him in the eye without feeling a knife twist in my chest. He was innocent, I knew that. But every smile, every dad he called me, felt like a reminder of the life I'd lost. The months that followed were dark. My wife continued her affair, no longer hiding it. Mark came around more openly. I realized everyone around me probably knew or suspected, except me. I was the fool, the last to know. But I didn't lash out. I waited. I focused on my work, saving every dollar. I quietly prepared to leave. A year passed. My wife still didn't care. My mother still blamed me. My so-called best friend smirked around me like he'd won some kind of prize. And then came the day that brought everything full circle. My son came to me one evening. He was dressed up, nervous, shifting from foot to foot. He said, "Dad, I want you to walk me down the aisle." My heart stopped. He was getting married young, and he still thought of me as his father despite everything. But I couldn't do it. The wound was too deep, the lie too big. I looked at him and said the coldest words I've ever spoken. "Ask your real dad." Then I closed the door. The sound of that door shutting echoed through my soul. It wasn't just the end of my relationship with him. It was the end of everything. 10 years of my life, erased in a single sentence. And yet, somewhere in that silence, I felt a strange sense of power. For the first time since the betrayal, the choice was mine. I thought that closing the door on him would be the end of it, but it wasn't. The ripple effect of that one sentence spread through my entire family like a storm. That same evening, my phone started buzzing relentlessly. Calls from my wife, messages from my mother, even a few from Mark. They all wanted to know what had happened. I didn't answer. I sat in the dark, staring at my reflection in the window. For years, I'd been a background character in my own life, used for stability while others played their games. That night, I promised myself I would never be that man again. The next morning, my wife showed up at my door, her face red with anger. "How could you do that to him?" she screamed, not caring that the neighbors could hear. "He needed you. He wanted you to be there on the most important day of his life, and you just abandoned him." Her words stung, but I stayed calm. I looked her straight in the eyes and said, "He's not my son. He never was. That was your choice, your lie. You and Mark made that decision for me 10 years ago. Don't you dare put this on me now." For the first time, I saw something flicker in her expression. Not guilt, not shame, but fear. Fear that I wasn't going to play along anymore. She tried to backpedal, switching from anger to manipulation. "You're still his dad in his heart. Biology doesn't matter. What matters is who raised him." I couldn't help but laugh. A bitter, hollow sound. Funny. Biology suddenly matters to you when you wanted Mark. But now that the truth is out, you want me to ignore it. That's convenient. She had no reply. She just stood there shaking her head before finally storming off. But that confrontation lit a fire in me. I realized they still expected me to be the same old doormat. They thought my love for that boy, for the family, would keep me bound to them forever. What they didn't realize was that I was already gone inside. Over the next few weeks, I started setting my revenge into motion. Not loud, not violent, but precise. First, I went through all our financial records. Over the years, I had put my wife's name on almost everything. The house, the cars, the accounts. She always framed it as, "We're a team." And I trusted her. That trust was my weakness. But there were still assets she didn't know about. Investments in my name only. Savings accounts she couldn't touch. A retirement fund she assumed didn't exist. I moved quietly, transferring what I could, closing what I didn't need, liquidating stocks. Piece by piece, I built myself a safety net she couldn't touch. At the same time, I watched Mark. He grew bolder, spending more time around the house, acting like he belonged. My wife encouraged it, treating him like the head of the family. Even my mother sang his praises, telling anyone who would listen that Mark stepped up where my son couldn't. I let them believe it. One evening, I even walked in on Mark, sitting in my living room recliner, beer in hand, acting like he owned the place. He smirked at me and said, "Man, you should have known. The kid's mine. Always was. You just played babysitter." My blood boiled, but I didn't take the bait. I simply smiled back and said, "You're right, Mark. I was blind, but don't worry. I see everything now." He didn't catch the meaning, but he would. Behind the scenes, I contacted a lawyer. I explained everything: the affair, the paternity, the betrayal. He listened carefully and said something that changed my strategy. "You can't change the past, but you can control the future. If you want out, we'll make sure you walk away with everything that's rightfully yours." That was exactly what I needed. I filed for divorce, quietly without warning. I requested a paternity test on record, even though I already knew the truth. The paperwork was my weapon. When my wife was served, she exploded. She showed up at my work, screaming that I was destroying the family. My mother called me a monster for abandoning them. Even my son left a message, saying, "I don't care what you think, you're still my dad." Each call, each accusation, was another nail in the coffin of the life I'd once believed in. And then came the day of the test results. Official. Black and white. The boy I'd raised for a decade was not mine. The look on my wife's face, when she saw that paper, panic, rage, then desperation, was almost worth the years of pain. But I wasn't done. I brought copies of that paper to my mother. "You said I should have seen it. Well, now you can see it for yourself." She looked down at the document, her face pale, but she still refused to apologize. "You're weak," she said coldly. "Real men raise the children given to them." That was the moment I realized I didn't just need to leave my wife, I needed to leave them all. The web of lies was too thick, they all played a part. They all benefited from my blind loyalty. My mother protected my wife's secret, because it meant stability for the family. My wife used me for security while giving herself to Mark. And Mark, he stole a decade of my life without a shred of remorse, so I made my choice. I packed what I needed. I closed the accounts they didn't know about. And one night, without a word, I left the house for good. The next morning, they realized what I had done. My phone lit up with dozens of missed calls, messages filled with rage and panic. My wife begged me to come back. My mother accused me of destroying the family name. Mark tried to taunt me, saying, "You can't escape us, we're family whether you like it or not." But they were wrong. For the first time in 10 years, I was free. And as I sat alone in my new apartment, looking at the stack of papers that proved everything, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: peace. But deep inside, I knew this was only the beginning. The divorce was filed, the secrets exposed, but the real revenge? That was still to come. Because they thought they'd taken everything from me. They thought I was broken. What they didn't know was that I'd already started building a life without them. A life they would never touch again. And when they finally saw what I had prepared, they would regret ever thinking they could replace me. When I walked away from that house, I knew they wouldn't let me go quietly, and I was right. Within days, the calls turned from begging to threatening. My wife said she'd take me to court for abandoning our son. Mark sent smug texts about how I'd run away like a coward. My mother, well, she left me voicemails that sounded more like orders than pleas. But none of them knew that I had been preparing for this. The divorce papers had been filed. The paternity test was already in the system. My lawyer told me to hold my ground. "You've got the truth on your side," he said. "They're just trying to rattle you. Don't flinch." And I didn't. Weeks turned into months. The legal process crawled forward, but I stayed patient. Meanwhile, I focused on building a new routine. For the first time in a decade, I cooked for myself. I decorated a place that was mine alone. I sat in silence without fear of someone yelling, nagging, or betraying my trust. But the peace was always interrupted by the storm brewing on the other side. One afternoon, my lawyer called. "They're going to fight dirty," he warned. "Your wife is claiming you were always the father figure, that you have no right to walk away now. She wants alimony. And she's bringing your mother and Mark in as witnesses against you." I should have been surprised, but I wasn't. They were predictable. They had always counted on me being weak, on me being afraid of public humiliation. But what they didn't know was that I was no longer afraid. In fact, I was counting on them to try. Because I had a plan. At the next court hearing, I sat calmly as they all walked in together, my wife, Mark, and my mother. They looked like a united front, whispering and smirking, as if victory was already theirs. My wife testified first, painting a picture of me as cold, detached, and abandoning a child who needed me. Mark nodded along, playing the role of supportive partner. My mother even took the stand, saying I was too weak to handle fatherhood, and that Mark had saved the family. When they finished, my lawyer stood. He didn't argue. He simply pulled out a folder and slid a document across to the judge, the paternity results. The room fell silent. The judge read it slowly, then looked up at my wife. "So, you acknowledge this man as the father for 10 years, but you knew all along he wasn't?" Her face went white. She tried to stammer out an excuse, something about protecting stability. But it was too late. The evidence was clear. My lawyer continued calmly, Your Honor, not only has my client been deceived for a decade, but he has also been publicly humiliated and manipulated into providing for a child that was never his. We ask that this be taken into consideration for the division of assets. The judge nodded. And just like that, the balance shifted. My wife's claims for alimony crumbled. Mark's arrogant smirk faded. My mother looked like she'd swallowed something bitter. For the first time, they realized the power. They thought they had over me was gone, but I wasn't done yet. After the hearing, I walked out into the hallway. They were all there, waiting to corner me. My wife lunged forward, hissing, "How could you do this to us? You're destroying everything." I looked her in the eye and said quietly, "No, you did that the moment you chose him." Then I nodded at Mark. "You think you've won, but you just inherited a family built on lies. Good luck with that." And to my mother, who glared at me with disgust, I said the words I should have said years ago. "You're not my judge, not my keeper, not even my family anymore." I walked away. And for once, they didn't follow. Over the next few weeks, the gossip started. Word spread in our community, at work, among friends. People learned the truth, that the boy I raised wasn't mine, that my wife had been with my best friend all along, that my mother knew and said nothing. Suddenly, the sympathy they expected to receive never came. Instead, whispers followed them everywhere. I didn't even have to say a word. Mark, who once loved being the center of attention, now hated going out in public. My wife found old friends turning cold on her. Even my mother, who cared so much about family reputation, found herself shunned at church. And me? For the first time, people looked at me with respect instead of pity. Not because I fought loudly, but because I finally chose myself. One evening, I sat in my apartment with a cup of coffee,
scrolling through the endless missed calls on my phone. My son had even reached out again, leaving a voicemail that broke my heart. "I don't care who my real dad is. You're still the one who taught me everything. Please, don't leave me." I didn't delete the message, but I didn't call back either, not yet. Because, as much as it hurt, I knew I couldn't be the man he needed, until I was finally free of the people who had broken me. And that freedom was almost complete. The divorce was nearly finalized, the assets they thought they'd take from me were safe, their social masks were shattered, and the best part? I still had one last move left. Something that would ensure they could never manipulate me again. That was when the real revenge began. When I said I had one last move left, I meant it. The court victory. And the gossip that followed had weakened them, but they still believed they could wear me down eventually. They still believed, deep down, that I would break, that I would come crawling back to play the role they needed me to play. And that's when I decided to make sure they never had that illusion again. It started with the house, the one they all gathered in, the one where my son looked at me and said I wasn't the head of the family anymore. They assumed they would end up with it after the divorce. My wife even boasted once in a heated message, "Don't forget, that house is mine. You'll be out on the street." What she didn't know was that months earlier, before filing for divorce, I had quietly shifted ownership into a trust in my name only. My lawyer and I set it up so that it would never end up in her hands. When the papers came through, her face went red as she realized the home she counted on using against me was gone. But that was only step one. Step two was about exposure. I had all the text messages, all the proof of the affair, even old emails between her and Mark that left no doubt. For years, they had treated me like a fool behind my back, confident that I would never dare to fight back. Now I uploaded every last piece of evidence to a secure folder and sent the link to a hand-picked list of people, friends, relatives, colleagues, not to humiliate them out of spite, but to strip away the narrative. They had tried to spin about me being the weak, cold husband who drove her into another man's arms. The truth did what I could never do alone. It silenced them. Overnight, Mark's reputation at work crumbled. My wife lost friendships she thought were solid. My mother, who had built her entire identity around protecting the family's image, found herself Whisper's subject at every gathering. They wanted me to carry their shame. Instead, I handed it back to them in full view of everyone they knew. But still, something ate at me. It was the boy, the one I had raised, taught, comforted, and loved as my own for 10 years. As much as I tried to shut it out, his voicemail played on a loop in my head. "You're still the one who taught me everything. Please don't leave me." For weeks I struggled with it. Was he part of their betrayal? Or was he just another victim, caught in a web of lies he never asked for? Finally, I decided I needed closure. I reached out to him. We met at a small cafe, away from everyone. He looked nervous, like he didn't know if I would yell or walk away again. Instead, I just sat down and asked, "What do you want from me?" Honestly. He looked at me for a long time before saying, "I don't care who my biological dad is. You were there for me. You're the one who came to my games, who helped me with homework, who talked to me when I was scared. I don't want you to be my father by blood, I just want you to be my dad." I didn't cry, I thought I would, but instead, a strange calm settled over me. For the first time, I realized that revenge wasn't just about hurting the ones who hurt me. It was about choosing who deserved to stay in my life, and he did, but that didn't mean his mother, Mark, or even my own mother would ever get another chance. In the months that followed, the divorce was finalized. They got almost nothing. The house stayed with me. The assets they thought they'd take never left my hands. And as for my mother, I stopped answering her calls entirely. Blood ties didn't mean loyalty. She chose her side, and now I was choosing mine. The final blow came on. A quiet Sunday morning. I posted a simple message online. No anger, no insults, just a statement of fact. I raised a boy for 10 years, believing he was mine. I found out he wasn't. My wife and best friend betrayed me. My own mother knew and said nothing. But I chose to walk away, to rebuild, and to take back my life. Sometimes the strongest revenge is living free. The post spread further than I expected. Strangers reached out with support, sharing their own stories of betrayal and survival. It wasn't about shame anymore. It was about turning pain into strength, and that more than any court win or gossip was the revenge I wanted all along. Because while they were stuck in the ruins of their choices, my wife trying to fix a relationship with a man who could never replace me, Mark struggling with a reputation he'd never escape, my mother sitting alone with no one to control. I was finally living. The boy I raised still came around sometimes. We didn't call each other father and son anymore, but we shared meals, laughed, talked about his future. He understood boundaries now, and I respected him for it. He was proof that even out of lies, something real could still grow. 1 year after walking away, I stood on the porch of my own house, the one they thought they'd take from me, and smiled. Not because I had destroyed them, but because I had refused to let them destroy me. And that, in the end, was the best revenge of all.